The Deus Ex series was initially the passion project of a team of skilled video game designers, headed by Warren Spector. What separates Spector's design process from his colleagues is a heavy emphasis on player choice and interaction with the game's world through level design. This philosophy carries over to almost every critically acclaimed project he developed for, including the Thief series, System Shock, and the Ultima series. Spector's approach to the problem of variety in gameplay is very different from the modern techniques used in other AAA games. The modern approach, as of late, seems to be dramatically increasing the number of gameplay mechanics and abilities the player character can employ, but this practice can backfire. In an attempt to offer something for everybody, the core appeal and purpose of the game becomes unclear, and unnecessary genres of play start to combine in often counterproductive ways. In comparison, a game like Thief knows what its main gameplay is, and polishes it with mechanics that only apply to the gameplay. Thief is about stealth. Full stop. The player character is vulnerable in open combat to incentivize stealth, and the player does not have loud weaponry. To replace the hundreds of game mechanics, the character is given a small number of tools that have multiple uses. The bow can be used for fighting, escaping, and climbing into hidden areas. In other words, Spector built very strong self-contained simulations. What ultimately separates Deus Ex from these other excellently designed games was the world of Deus Ex, and how that influenced every aspect of its gameplay. All of the games take place in a future cyberpunk dystopian setting, and follow the story of a trained counter-terrorist operative. I will go into greater detail about the story later, but here's how it relates to the gameplay. In response to obstacles, the player can make use of augmentations, which operate like this world's version of magic, and act as the player's toolset, like in the Thief games. There are augmentations to increase the maximum weight the player can carry, eliminate fall damage, punch through walls like the Kool-Aid Man, and much more. The glass shield cloaking system literally turns the player invisible. Do I even need to explain the uses of such an ability in a combat-focused game? But it runs deeper than this, as all the abilities can be used to the discretion of the player to match their style. If the player wants to, they can turn invisible and silence their footsteps to sprint past all the enemies and slam the door on the way out. Or turn themselves into a tank with damage absorption and start lobbing grenades left and right. The world is your oyster, and the world responds to your activities in believable ways. So it's a full-on RPG that lets you tackle problems with whatever tools you want, but the mission structure allows for different approaches to the same problem, and almost never forces the player to behave a certain way. If it seems like there is only one solution to the problem, in reality you have only found one and forgot to consider or discover the other 5. Want to break into a police station? One player will sneak in through the ventilation system, another will come in guns blazing, while another can literally waltz through the front door and yell at the desk secretary to shut up and mind his own business. Warren Spector stated that his career in video games has been spent trying to replicate the freedom of choice he experienced playing Dungeons & Dragons, and Deus Ex is definitely the closest we will get to that experience. The world of Deus Ex does not suffer from the old video game problem of everything feeling like stiff cardboard cutouts of people and places. Throughout the experience, every interaction feels organic and pre-planned. The world feels lived in, environments are littered with detail, documents scattered everywhere, computers with emails, messy bedrooms, and industrial areas look like legitimate working environments. I won't spoil too much of the story, but a crucial theme of Deus Ex in every one of the games is conspiracy theories are real and have an impact on the motivations of the characters. This means that one moment you are conducting corporate espionage, only to awkwardly stumble across plans of world conquest and domination being conducted by secret organizations. It all blends together really nicely and matches common concepts found in science fiction. In the near future, humanity has benefited from large technological improvements. Humans are being integrated with machinery to enhance their job performance or replace lost limbs, which sparks controversy over how this ascension might institute classism and discrimination. But for our purposes, that is mainly an excuse to punch people with our robot fists. Unfortunately, the rise in technology has allowed a ridiculous spread in corporate consolidation. Monolithic corporations are controlling more and more of society, and have a greater influence over world governments. As it has become increasingly harder for society to match the intentions of its citizens, terrorism is at an all-time high, and unfortunately, the terrorists are also using augmentations and advanced weaponry, so isn't that just great? But the world becomes much more complicated than this, and the player can spend long hours exploring the gray area in these issues, which allows another appeal of this game to truly flourish: philosophy. Every Deus Ex game constantly bombards you with philosophical quandaries of various degrees. Do you execute the terrorist in a hostage situation? Knock him out? Allow him to escape with or without the hostage? Is the world better off as a part of a collective hive mind? Are the vending machines in a conspiracy to dispense lemon-lime soda? Is it better to suppress a radical news organization from publishing classified information, or does that violate your interpretation of freedom of speech? The answers are not always simple, and always engage the audience to choose wisely, as the player will quickly notice that their actions can have unintended consequences. What I would consider to be the true final boss battle of Deus Ex 3 is nothing more than you arguing in an empty room about human nature with the antagonist, whose motivations are complex, completely logical, and do not just boil down to literal Skeletor. The fate of the entire world depends on how convincing you are in this conversation, and debating him into recognizing his mistakes. Alternatively, you even have the opportunity to take his advice and carry out his master plan for him if you think his intentions match your own beliefs on the issue. Instead of giving the player total freedom like in most Western RPGs, Deus Ex excels by providing the player a world with a set number of ways to tackle its problems, and improving every aspect of these solutions and making sure they fit into the story. I personally think, at least from an artistic standpoint, this is the ultimate way to craft a combat-based RPG that will stick with players for years to come, and perhaps even teach them something useful about our own world and those that inhabit it.